Am I V8 swapping the M3 GTR? Because right now the car has the S54, but the goal is to do the flat plane V8 swap with a sequential straight cut gearbox. And we're going to talk about how that's all going to work.
The vehicle is a purple BMW.
Right. Dusty computer. Okay, so I'm just going to use Jordan's software from RK Tunes, but I'll put you guys here because I am going to start it as I'm doing all this. All right, I'm going to press clear on just the DTCs. Without starting the car, the only code that's coming up is 79, which is the gas temperature sensor for the exhaust, which I don't really care about. And then there's code 234, which I don't know what that means. Catalytic converter. We don't care about that. Where are all the codes? I don't understand what happened to the codes. Maybe we need to let the car get warm and rev it and do a couple things and see if that makes any other codes come up. None of the other codes are coming up and I don't understand. Maybe I'll drive it as well. Could be a nice thing to do after work. Take it for a quick test drive. See if any of the codes persist. Okay, so it's still not throwing any codes. So I'm gonna close this for the moment and I'll reopen it when we get back. But I'm gonna drive it and see how it behaves, get it up to temp. We're just in auto, taking it easy, getting everything warm, no misfires. This is weird. There's still no code. Why is there still, well, there might be codes, but there's no check engine light. Downshifts are still good. All right, here goes. So far, so good. I'm very curious about the codes. There's got to be some codes. Well, the car is fine. I mean, it's not overheating or tired right now, so maybe that's a factor. So, but we're gonna get her home now, and we're gonna check those codes. Well, the drive went good. I didn't get pulled over. There were a few police cars out there, so. All right, we're opening up Jordan's software again. That's so weird. All the codes are gone. Maybe the only things that we need to do are mechanical? Strange. But I'll take it.
This one.
Oh, that button?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for closing the door.
It's so hot.
You drew a heart on the black. All right, anyways, so we'll send these parts over to SK Motorsport. They'll install the ones that they think are necessary. I would say clutch, flywheel, and starter for sure. Maybe the TPS doesn't need to be done, but since we have it, might as well install it along with all the other stuff, because why not? But that was kind of fun to drive. I didn't have the AC on, so I'm a little sweaty. But now we're gonna do a little bit of a time jump to the next time I have a chance to record, so we can talk about the V8 swap. Just for awareness, because it's raining outside, I'm by myself at the house right now, chilling with the car, standing in the garage, and in case you didn't know, the feeling of peace when you're inside while it's raining That's known as chrysalism for people who enjoy being indoors during rain or thunderstorms, rainstorms, whatever. All right. So, hey, welcome to today's video. I hope you enjoyed that intro of driving the car around. I really don't know why none of the codes came back. Maybe some of the codes were just stored from the Vanoss being rebuilt and stuff like that, and things not adapting properly. I'm not sure. It still definitely went into limp mode when we were in California, so we're still going to probably put in the new TPS and do the starter motor, all this sort of stuff, because the starter motor is... that's mechanical, the flywheel is old, the clutch is old. I don't know, I've talked about this so many times. What we're gonna talk about today is, well, we're gonna answer the question posed by the title of the video. Am I V8 swapping the M3 GTR? Of course I am. Don't worry. We're gonna get into that, into the details and the research I've done, which engine, which straight cut geared transmission I'm using, the whole 9 yards. Because a lot of people have their suggestions and their assumptions and what they would do and what they'd like to see me do. So I'm gonna answer all the questions. So, are we LS swapping the car? No. But another suggestion that most people have is the S65B40, the 4-liter cross-plane V8 in the E92 M3. That's good for 8,000, 9,000 RPM, depending on how you build it. It's a great engine. Nothing against that engine. But if I want it to be flat plane crank, because I'm only considering flat plane crank V8s as candidates, we've got to use custom bespoke parts that like maybe 2 or 3 people in the world know how to make. So if there's ever any issues with reliability or replacing parts or finding spares, it's really just, it's too bespoke for what I want to do with the car, which is drive it and beat the hell out of it. I can't bring myself to do that. And it's also extortionately expensive because you're basically building a P65 racing motor at that point for like $60,000 in total. So not worth doing, unfortunately. It would have been cool to put a BMW motor in this car, but not gonna happen. Now, there are other alternatives for flat plane crank factory engines. There's things like, I think the Ferrari F136, I think that's what it's called. Briefly thought about that, then decided I need something more reliable. Now there's the McLaren twin turbo V8, the 3.8 or the 4.0, but those even used are pretty expensive. So let's bring the budget down a little bit. Another option is the Voodoo motor out of the Shelby GT350. It's a 5.2 V8, it's flat plane crank. The factory headers on it make it not sound particularly good, but we could put some kind of concept 841 style headers on it and it would make the Voodoo sound like an M3 GTR, which is the goal. And for a while, that was the engine I was going to use, was the Mustang motor. The flat plane Mustang motor would be good for 500 something crank horsepower. Perfect. Fine. Whatever. No idea if it would fit though. There is tuning available. They're not super expensive to buy used, so we would have worked it out. And there was already support for sequential transmission options. I'm pretty sure it's possible to get a Hollinger to mate up to the 5.2 no problem. So, you know, it would have worked. But, and I'll talk about this later, LT6, the C806 engine was made available as an option due to recent developments in the aftermarket industry. And the LT6, when it first came out, my immediate thought was not, wow, the C806 is cool. It's, I want that engine. When the LT6, the 5.5 flat plane crank engine came out, I thought, that's it. I need that engine. I need to put it in this car. And for the longest time, you couldn't tune them. No one even had a part number for buying a crate engine from GM. Technically, you still can't, but it's like buying a spare. It's not too expensive either. It's basically, I think, the same cost as an LSX 454. For the longest time, it just wasn't available. But now in 2026, things have changed. So we will be putting the 5.5 Chevy flat plane crank LT6 engine rated at 670 crank horsepower into this car, into the M3 GTR, and it's gonna be perfect. And for those of you who may or may not be concerned or you don't know about this LT6 engine, the LT6 from factory sounds just like the P60B40. And I'm gonna prove it to you by showing you some clips from Brandon's garage. Do you hear it? Those burnouts, the shifting. The in-car, it's a little hard to capture, but trust me, with a gutted interior and the side exit and some good headers and all that stuff, inside and out, it's gonna sound just like the M3 GTR. There's a lot of benefits to using the LT6. We never have to crack it open. We never have to upgrade the internals. We could put a new intake plenum on it. You know, we're doing the headers. We can do tuning, more about that later. You know, flex fuel. And if we need a spare, we just go on eBay. Or if we want something brand new, we buy it from GM. And it's a Chevy motor. You know, whether you're a GM fanboy or not, the whole reason why the LS is such a good platform for swaps is that there's parts everywhere, they're reliable, people understand them, they just work. Putting the LT6 into this car and not even messing with it, it's a good recipe for reliability, which is good because the end game goal is to tour the country in this car. And if we're gonna do a V8 swap, I want it to be a good one. And I'm pretty confident that the LT6 will be pretty good. Now, that is the engine swap out of the way. We figured it out. The engine has been chosen. We're gonna figure out how to make it work. The other half of the puzzle, not even, there's a lot to this. There's a lot of smaller details, but the other half of what you guys really want to see me do is you want me to have straight cut gears in a racing transmission mated to a flat plane crank V8. So this took a lot of research and a lot of deliberation and reaching out to various different companies to decide which transmission would be the best one. So I've looked at Hollinger, and they're a great choice. They're a bit expensive, not as expensive as X-Track, but they're pricey. But I don't know of any front engine configuration setups that work with something like the LT6. I haven't seen anything. Maybe someone's hooked up a Hollinger to maybe a C7 Z06 or a ZR1. I haven't seen anything like that. I've looked at Drenth. They've done a lot of BMW stuff in the past. Their DG500 transmission seems very nice, but the torque rating is a little too low, even for this NA V8 with a flat plane crank, which usually is typically not what you would choose if you wanted a whole bunch of torque. So unfortunately, that's not an option, which is too bad because they're a pretty good price for value for what they have to offer. So I started researching Samsonis and their RWDS and their RS90. And the prices for their gearboxes are pretty good. And I did a little more research. I will say the gears are pretty loud in their gearboxes. Here's a clip of an RS90 and I think a 2J car. And we're gonna get into the details, but basically, after speaking with a rep from their company, I've decided we're going to mate a Samsonis gearbox to the LT6. And we're either going to use, I'm looking at my notes here, the RWDS, which has a torque rating of 590 foot-pounds of torque, or their RS90, which has a very impressive 880 foot-pounds of torque as a rating. And through my own research and confirming a couple things with a Samsonis rep, it is possible to do a manual/sequential setup with an LT6. And I'm gonna get into that. And I'm gonna look at my notes here so you understand what I'm saying. So let's reverse engineer things a little bit so that you can understand my thought process so that I could try and confirm things. The C8 Z06 with the LT6 has the same Tremec dual clutch 8-speed as the C8 Stingray. The Stingray has the LT2 engine, which is mated to this DCT, which is in the Z06, mated to the LT6. And this is where it gets cool. This means the LT2 and the LT6 have the same bolt pattern and also the same input shaft spline count. And this is where it gets really cool. More importantly, the Stingray LT2 and thus the LT6 have the same bolt pattern as the LT1, the LT4, and the LT5. For those of you that don't know, the LT5 is the C7 ZR1 engine, which, as we know, came in manual in a front-engine configuration. With a little reverse engineering and critical thinking, we can conclude a sequential that is compatible to a C7 ZR1 engine will also work with the C8 Z06's LT6 engine in a front-engine configuration, like how we want. So good news! The Dacia Sandero. And guess what? Good news. Samsonis is actually familiar with the Corvette platform and have even historically made sequential racing parts for past generation Corvettes from C5 to C7. To me, in my head, that means that if they can make sequential parts for the C7 and they're aware of the bolt patterns and the spline counts and it all just works already, that means it shouldn't take much to create something that works with the LT6, even though it's never been done. There's enough in common with the hardware. So the tricky thing is I'm gonna have to use one of their universal gearboxes, the RWDS or the RS90. And so I emailed Samsonis because I don't know a whole lot about this stuff. I don't know a whole lot about transmissions and making them work with random frickin' engines. I emailed them to be like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Damn. So I reached out to Samsonis for bell housing recommendations to properly mate everything together. And they gave me an answer. And as far as I know, that's all I need. That was the only piece of the puzzle I was missing. It's basically confirmed that basically, thanks to the LT5 and the LT6 and so on, sharing the same bolt pattern and the same inner input shaft 26 spline count, this should just work. And so with all this info, confirming that they're familiar with the platform, we have a bell housing selection, and all that good stuff, I'm 90% sure, because again, that extra missing 10% is me just not really knowing what I'm doing. I'm 90% sure we can get a Samsonis gearbox to work with the LT6. But, and this is going to bring us into the topic of tuning, we cannot use the standard Bosch E68 ECU to do all of this. Putting the Chevy C8 Z06 ECU into this car would just not work. It will not enjoy trying to communicate with a sequential, obviously. So good news!
What?
Thanks to trailblazers in the aftermarket industry like HP Tuners and Pikes Performance, tuning is now available for the C8 Z06, at least right now on the E68 Bosch ECU. And I imagine that also includes the ZR1, which means in theory, if we ever got hungry for horsepower, we could put the LT7 in this car at some point and just make it absolutely insane. So why is that a big deal? Because we're still talking about the factory ECU. Well, a little bird told me. I'm not gonna say where or who, because I don't want you to go and hound people. The ECU in the Stingray, the C8 Stingray, is called the E99. And I know that it's on the near horizon that a Motec standalone will be coming out for the C8 Stingray. A Motec standalone package will be out for the C8 Stingray with the LT2, which means that since the E99 has been unlocked in the C8 Z06, Motec standalone functionality for the C8 Z06 LT6 platform is probably not far behind. So I've got no worries there. Now I don't know if it's gonna be an M130, an M150, or an M190 or whatever. It doesn't matter to me. So long as we can get the standalone in so that we can get the engine and the transmission to be happy, have the clutchless shifts and the aggressive rev matching and the proper Motec Motorsport traction control, all working so that this car is just super capable on a track, because this is going to get tracked when it's in this final iteration. That's all I care about. And because of this, you know, like I said, we can do flex fuel, we can tune it so it makes more power. I can even give you the power numbers here. So like, here are some horsepower numbers from a tuned C8 Z06. I'll give you the wheel horsepower and then I'll kind of estimate the crank horsepower. So stock tune and stock intake was 518 to the wheels. On 93 with a tune and an Eventuri intake, BMW guys will know who Eventuri is, that upped it to 532 horsepower, which is basically 670 stock crank to 688 or 690 at the crank. And with flex fuel, you're all the way up to 561 wheel horsepower, which is probably an estimated 720, 730 crank horsepower. Now I can't confirm that because no one's actually put the LT6 on an engine dyno like that before. But basically my math is 518 stock wheel horsepower to go up to 670. You add 29.49-ish percent. So 29.49-ish percent of 561 wheel horsepower E85. That's 726, blah, blah, blah. Basically 700 at the crank in a car that's probably gonna weigh 2,600, 2,700 pounds. That's a fast car. So just to reiterate, just to summarize, Chevy LT6, 700 crank horsepower, E85, E90, Samsung a sequential gearbox, Motec, profit. There's no profit. I'm never going to financially recover from this. But speaking of which, anyone who wants to sponsor this phase of the car, please, to offset most of or all of the costs of this kind of more expensive endeavor. It's not as much as the BMW engine route, but it's still not super cheap. It's definitely more financially responsible than buying an R34 GTR, to be fair. Any company that wants to sponsor the car will basically get a dedicated motorsport style livery where their branding is the main star of the entire livery, and that will just be on the car pretty much indefinitely until it's retired, where then I'll do a painted version of the livery and put it in a museum somewhere.
That belongs in a museum.
So, but that's the plan. The only thing is that regardless of who sponsors the car, there has to be purple and black. Base color purple and black striping. If it works better, we can change the accent colors from silver to something else. But anyways, I wanted to answer all your questions about my plans for the M3 GTR. Am I V8 swapping it, straight cut gears, standalone, blah, 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 all that good stuff. Oh, also, I have decided I'm going to gut the crap out of this car's interior. We're going to do polycarbonate, sapphire coated windows. We're gonna do carbon roof, some more carbon exterior stuff, carbon doors, carbon door cards. We'll do a full roll cage system. We're gonna aim for 2,700 pounds so that this car is a genuine rocket ship. This car will be able to keep up with some insanely fast cars. We'll do a whole bunch of other stuff like upgraded brakes and things like that, but you'll just have to see what I have planned for future videos as I slowly collect parts. Anyways, thank you all for watching today's video of me just talking about stuff next to the M3 GTR. Hope you guys enjoyed the sound clips from earlier. And I'm Tom the Racing Joker, and it stopped raining. So go and have a good rest of your Saturday, and I'll see you all next week. Take it easy, everyone. I love you, and bye-bye.